Right here?
Yeah.
What did I say? Drought and flood cycle 1890, severe overgrazing, the Royal Formation triggered. And what's the lesson learned? Rangeland ecology fragile and arid landscapes. See Barr, 1991, he goes through it ad nauseum about how livestock grazing and other things cause catastrophe ecologically on our watersheds. Let's see. Oh, I've got something about beaver here in the Gila River system, and lesson learned is in the 90s we started to really realize how beaver may contribute to stream ecology in Arizona. Before then, we pretty much thought of them as having most of their effects in high mountain meadows and alpine areas, places a long ways from southern Arizona.
So even in the 1890s, they were realizing that? Or are you just making a comment about the 1990s?
Yeah, well, yeah, that's a comment,
Okay, got it.
but they were documented back in those days. Well, basically eliminated.
Yeah.
That's about the time they were trapped out of existence, except for a few little pockets here and there.
So how about the gray? Who's gray in there?
Julia.
Julia.
Let's see. What do we have here? Okay, 1872, the Mining Act of the United States was passed, which gives the federal mineral estate, makes it available to people through a very simple claims process, and also allows for patenting of the land on which the minerals are found. And actually that wasn't, the patenting provision is what gave Rosemont the pit area, and that patenting moratorium went into effect the year that they submitted their patent application. Their predecessor submitted it. So 1880, let's see, so Gita was talking about the Gadsden Purchase enabling the railroad. The railroad wasn't actually constructed through this area until 1880, and then around 1887, along with the earthquake, there started to be a series of very large damaging floods on Cienega Creek, and they had to move the railroad out of the floodplain. The railroad itself created kind of a levee within the floodplain. It may have contributed to some of the oil cutting that we see in the lower Cienega, so that's what that is. So 1908 is when Colonel Potter did the survey of the area that ran basically between Canoa Ranch and the Cienega Valley, and he actually proposed that whole landscape as a federal reserve, basically the predecessor of the U.S. Forest Service. But what actually got designated as forest was a much smaller area in the Santa Ritas, but also later on the Forest Reserve, Santa Rita Experimental Range on the other side. But anyway, the survey that he did was, I think, 1908. And then in 1910, Arizona's first hydrologist, G.E.P. Smith, designed a dam that was a subsurface dam. Instead of being an above-ground dam to capture surface water runoff, he used his knowledge of groundwater hydrology, really, to create an artificial bedrock feature in the bottom of the stream channel to force the water up and thereby increase the flow of Cienega Creek. And this concrete arch dam is still on Cienega Creek today, functioning, and it diverts water for a golf course currently.
That's the one at Rancho Del Lago?
That is the one at
Okay.
Rancho Del Lago. And then the reason I put the San Javier Reservation was the Tohono O'odham presence continued in the Greaterville area, at least to the turn of the century, but after the reservations were established, more and more Tohono O'odham left the landscape of southern Arizona from various parts, and I don't know whether that was by choice or not, but a lot of the Tohono O'odham moved away from various parts of the landscape to the San Javier and the main body of the Tohono O'odham Nation. And then Meade and I were talking about when the turbine pumps came into use. Turbine pumps are a much more efficient way of lifting water. They depend on fossil fuels, so fossil fuels had to be available, and they can lift water from much deeper in the aquifer, so that's a significant feature. And they started to come into the Tucson basin around the late 19-teens. I don't know when they got to Cienega Creek.
Blue?
Blue.
Sheila, is that you?
1921, 1922, oral history shows major snowstorm and a drought at the same time. And then when did Vail sell? Oh, somewhere in here is when the Vail sold to the Boyces, Chiricahua Cattle Company.
1928, I think.
28, okay, so we need to add that date.
Yeah.
But we have oral history of school teachers having to be led by horses to get home and then followed by drought. So, lesson learned in the vagaries of the climate.
And the first, we didn't put on there, but the first homestead was in at 1873.
Well, that is on here.
Is it on there? Okay.
The Homestead Act, 1871, the Empire Ranch house was in use.
Okay.
1864, the Homestead application.
Okay, so 1871, the first little homestead, European settlers.